Hello, Panther fans, and welcome to Episode 2 of Panther Weekly. This is Tyler Kuehl. I'm Cooper Weidenthaler. For Episode 2, we're going to be talking women's soccer. Davenport last season, kind of an up-and-down year. They finished 6-9-2 overall under first-year head coach Paige Eli, and they went 4-3-2, above 500 in GLIAC play. Tyler, again, not a real strong season, but they did qualify for the GLIAC tournament. Talk a little bit about last season women's soccer.
You know, it was, like you said, Cooper, it was up and down at times. And Paige Eli, despite being a first-year head coach, had been with the program. She played 4 years. She was assistant coach for a long time. So she has a general idea. And there was a lot of veteran talent last year with this Panther team. Not so much this season, but looking back at last year, there was this kind of this moment of like where they were able to get some offense going at times. At the same time, they were getting thwarted by a lot of good defense here in the GLIAC. I mean, when you're taking on teams like number 2 Grand Valley State and Ferris State, who was ranked in the top 25 for a good stretch of the season, you're going to have some issues offensively and defensively. But they did have some highlights to go off on there. And, of course, they went up to the Upper Peninsula to take on Northern and Michigan Tech in their schedule. They swept that trip, which Michigan Tech was no slouch last year. Northern Michigan was kind of up and around, but Michigan Tech was a tough game. And then in their league game against Ferris State, because remember, in women's soccer, they only play each team once to count against their conference schedule. Home game against Ferris State, 0-0 tie. And I know, obviously, people look at a 0-0 draw as kind of a little bit of a boring score, especially in soccer, but especially a game like Ferris State, a team that was towards the top of the conference, that was almost as close as you can get to a win if you are the Panthers. I remember Paige Eli was very proud about that game. And, you know, this was a team that hung around. They had 5 games that went to extra time. They only won one of them, unfortunately, 1, 2, and 2, again, in extra time. But they were able to really show that they could compete, despite not being able to have the same kind of offensive output they've had in years past before. But they did have some highlight players. They had Ashlyn Skidmore, who had 3 goals and 3 assists, led the team with 9 points. Then you had Holly Bertke, the freshman. She had 3 goals herself. Madeleine Zayan, who you talked to earlier, we'll get to that interview later on. She had 3 goals. Catherine Steiner, the senior, 2 goals and 2 assists. They were all stepping up and playing big moments, big minutes for the Panthers. But probably the MVP of the season, I would say, was their freshman goalkeeper, Samantha Beckles, out of Toronto. She was fantastic. She had 1.75 goals against average and 91 saves, which was 3rd among GLIAC goalkeepers. There were games I remember broadcasting, and I would say to myself, like, man, like the reason why the game was close or the reason why the Panthers had a chance was because of the play of Beckles. Of her, I believe it was her 17 starts. Yep, 17 starts. 11 times she had to make 5 or more saves.
A note on Beckles real quick, but off the top you said Ferris State and Grand Valley. Grand Valley is a perennial powerhouse.
Yep.
They won the national championship, all of Division II. They were the best team, last team standing. You mentioned Ferris State, top 25. Don't forget Ashland. They were top 15.
They were,
also
yes.
A very good program. But back to Beckles, no other Panther appeared in goal last season.
No.
She was in goal for every single minute this team played as a freshman,
yes.
no less. So she comes on as a rookie, plays every single second in goal for the Panthers, and she's coming back. That's a huge highlight for this team.
Just having that kind of like that safety in goal. And that's, I mean, we saw it a few years ago with the Davenport men's team with Aaron Orban. There's guys that are able to take over the position and really just ooze confidence throughout the rest of the team. Because there'd be times that Beckles would make a big save and then Davenport would go down the other end and get a chance. And that's what they were able to do. Now, yes, it did not end the way they wanted, of course. I mean, it was a tough game against Ashland at Ashland. Only a 1-0 match, too. So it's not like they got blown out when it came down to it. But this team has the potential to continue to build, and that's what Paige Eli has done in this offseason.
Yeah, she was an assistant under Chris Allen, and Allen was more of a defensive-minded coach.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so now year 2 under Eli, she's trying to get that new system in, trying to change from how they did things under Chris Allen. He was a great head coach. Program was great under him, but it's a new regime, and offense is going to be the name of the game. They were shut out 9 times last season, 7 of which were losses. So defense obviously very important, starts with Beckles at the back end, but offensively they've got to pick it up. And
it's going to be interesting to see who steps up. Obviously, there is some returners. Like I said, we have Skidmore. You have Holly Bertke, who's going to be a sophomore, and you hope that she's only going to build on a rather impressive freshman season. And then, of course, Madeleine Zayan, who just always seems like whenever she's out there, whenever she's on the pitch, she always seems to have an opportunity to create something, to make a play, because she has speed. She has a pretty good leg, so she can shoot it from far out outside the 18-yard box. The Panthers have the tools there offensively. Just last year, there was either just a missed pass here or a missed opportunity to take a shot there. There were opportunities for them to really continue to push the play. And I think that with like I said, the second year with Eli being the head coach, the team kind of realizes what she wants to see offensively and how they want to attack. So you're going to see a kind of I don't want to say a different team, but a more confident and maybe more structured offensively minded team.
Right, those three comebacks, Skidmore, Berkey, Zayan, each had 3 goals last year. That was the team lead. Only 15 goals scored as a team, so offense needs to pick it up, but there's only 6 upperclassmen on the whole roster.
Yes.
4 seniors, 2 juniors, rest are sophomores and freshmen.
Yeah.
Newcomer-wise, plenty coming in. We'll get to that after the interview, but 11 newcomers that are freshmen and then 1 transfer out of Lawrence Tech, Erica Hoffman, but plenty of new faces, plenty of youth. So the time is now if she's trying to build something and set that ground floor for the future.
And that's something you always see with any real program. If you have a team that you can kind of just build and be like, hey, here's the system. And they come in like, all right, we're going to buy into the system because this is a new team for us. They're all freshmen. They're all trying to learn and all newcomers. So Paige Eli has that perfect, the mound of clay she can just kind of turn into whatever she wants it to. But let's go to that interview with Cooper Weidenthaler talking with head coach Paige Eli and Madeleine Zayan.
Coach, I'll start with you. Some super weird times right now in the pandemic. So what have your day-to-day operations been like since the beginning of this month as kids have come back and classes have resumed?
It's been a little bit different, especially in the practice environment where we've had to alter a couple of things, practicing in pods and all that good stuff. But it's been really nice to get back into the swing of things, planning practices, getting the players back on board and all that kind of good stuff. So it's slowly getting back to normal. It doesn't feel like normal yet, but it's slowly getting there. It's just nice to actually be outside and on the field and have all the players back to campus.
Yeah, so obviously haven't been able to play games. You've been restricted as to what you can do with your kids. You mentioned pods, but how have you and your coaching staff been able to keep your players motivated without that fall schedule?
It's been tough because we only had 2 days of practice on the field and then we got shut down again. So it's been really interesting, especially this past week. We've done some workshops through virtual meetings, and it's interesting because you always wonder what the participation is going to be like, but the girls have been fantastic and they've just stuck with it. So we're just doing small things that we're not used to doing, doing things a little bit differently just to keep them engaged. But we've got plenty of things planned for when we get back on the practice field to make the environment competitive and keep it fun for the girls and make sure they're ready to go for the springtime when it comes around.
Yeah, so speaking of your coaching staff, you just added Chris Hayborne. He comes to us from Olivet Nazarene. He was a player there as well before he was an assistant. Just talk about Chris and kind of why he stood out in your hiring process.
We were really, really, really in need of a goalkeeper coach and somebody who loved to do what they did. And he was the one applicant that just stood out in terms of everything we needed. He played in college, currently coaching in college on the guy side, which for me is also a big plus, bringing somebody from the male side of the game into the female side of the game as well. That might have a little bit different experience to what a female goalkeeper coach may have. A goalkeeper coach working on the female side may have. So it was just a big yes, let's go for him. And he's been fantastic. He's been really, really great, very hands-on. The goalkeepers, I think they seem to love the environment that he's created for them. And you can just tell he loves doing what he does every single day. So I just love the investment that we see in him and the goalkeepers so far. So I think we've got some great stuff coming from our goalkeepers over the next few months.
GLIAC-wise, I mean, we've talked about maybe playing in the spring. Obviously, everything's up in the air still. Has there been any discussion on what that spring season may look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a go ahead. All the coaches are on board in the GLIAC of trying to get some games in and play. So right now, what we're looking to do is hopefully a 9-game schedule, 10-game schedule. I think it's going to be probably a 9 or 10-game schedule, and then a conference tournament. So plenty of games to play. It's going to be fun. It's still going to feel like a season. I think that we've got at least 9 games to play. So. That's what we're looking towards, and I think all the coaches in the GLIAC have done a good job of just coming to a conclusion of what we want to do and kind of all being on the same page. So I'm excited to see what the spring brings for us.
Lastly, recruiting, probably pretty challenging during the pandemic. What was that like, when we were not back at school, and then what has recruiting been like since you've gotten back to school?
Yeah, definitely different. Having to do everything through a computer screen or through a phone was definitely a different feel. The nice thing for us is we kind of had an idea of who we wanted to target for our next 2 classes. The difficult thing is not being able to actually go and watch them play and interact with them face to face. So, and that's still a problem. There's obviously teams that are playing right now, playing out of state, and some teams that are just beginning to play in state. So it's still figuring out when we can go see those kids and if games are actually going to happen. So total different feel, but got to keep going, got to keep pushing. It's the challenges that you've got to face as a coach in the sporting world. So we'll manage with it.
Absolutely. Maddie, switch to you. One of 4 seniors on this team coming here in 2020. First of all, congratulations on being named to the GLIAC All-Academic Excellence team. I know how important it is for you student athletes to compete both on the field and off it. How important is balancing school and soccer for you?
It's super important. I mean, obviously, I love playing soccer, but I'm also here to get a degree. And especially it being my last year, I want to really focus well on school. And I want to try to keep our team GPA high. So just got to time manage to do both.
Absolutely. During the pandemic, you probably weren't able to play as much or compete as much, and now you don't have a fall schedule. So how have you been able to stay in shape both mentally and physically?
I had surgery right at the beginning of all this, so it was tough at first. Definitely mentally tough because you get out of shape really fast and then you don't get in shape that fast. But in the beginning of all this, we did team Zoom calls and stuff, so it was really great motivation from both my teammates and then Paige, and all the coaches have been great, obviously, too. So getting back into it has been a little easier now that we're back at school and stuff, too. Even though we're on a freeze, we can still do stuff as a team, which is great.
Lastly, what's the morale on the team been like during pandemic? So you guys can't practice and play, and you mentioned having surgery and trying to come back from that. So you guys can't compete and do what you love right now. So what's the kind of the attitude and how are you guys feeling right now?
It's definitely different because we have a huge freshman class and it's obviously different than any fall season we've had. But I think we're going to try to use it to our advantage. But usually we come in and we have to have a preseason right away and we have just a couple weeks to get to know each other both on and off the field, whereas now we have a whole fall season basically to learn more about each other and get to know each other off the field, which then in turn will do better on the field. And we all understand what's going on and stuff like that. So I think that we're going to do our best to just be mentally and physically prepared for whenever we are allowed to play again.
Awesome. All right, guys. So that's it. That's all for you today. If you guys want to stay in touch with Davenport Athletics, go to dupanthers.com and follow us on social media.
Welcome back. Thank you again to head coach Paige Eli and senior forward Madeleine Zayan for joining me for that interview. So, segment 2, we talked about who's coming back a little bit. We mentioned 3 big offensive names, Skidmore, Bertkey, and who you just saw in the interview, Madeleine Zayan. And also back is Samantha Beckles in goal. Who's kind of joining them as some big names to look forward to that played with the program last season?
Well, up front, you have Alexis Deacon. That was the one forward that we really didn't mention. And she didn't register her name on the score sheet a lot, but I think with a little bit more playing time this year with a couple of seniors moving on, I think she'll get more of an increased role. In the midfield, you got Marissa Woods. And Marissa, she's been a player that's slowly developed, and she's watched a lot of great midfielders come through. She'll be kind of alongside Ashlyn Skidmore. A little bit more of a defensive role for Woods. You'll see her a lot this season. You have sophomores in Alexis Cook and Natalia Cassiello. Cassiello, who seems like a master with the ball. She's kind of, the best way I could describe her was kind of like a Michael Bradley for, your U.S. men's national team fans, where she's able to create offense, but she's able to be very capable in the defensive end with her. Sarah Posset and Angelina McSaubie, we didn't see them a whole lot last year, but maybe with some experience, they'll probably get some more time on the pitch. On the back end, you have Hannah Henney and Kylie Wynn, a couple of younger defensemen that have actually played pretty well last year when they were able to go out there. But the big 2, especially with the loss of Amani Richards and Cassandra Bosworth, these 2 are going to be very important. Regan Heinz, who was one of, 2 freshmen that started every game last year.
One of only 2 players returning that started every game last year.
And she had a real coming out party. She was absolutely fantastic. And Christina Dunstan, 46 starts for Christina Dunstan. And Heinz typically played the right back position, so if you're in soccer form, there's four defenders playing backs. You had Dunstan and Bosworth in the middle, Amani Richards on one side, Regan Heinz on the other. So I'm going to see if maybe Paige Eli tries to move her into the middle, because typically your center backs are your 2 better defenders.
And we lost those 2 starters, primary starters.
Yes, Richards and Bosworth. So you'll be wondering to see where Heinz will be, because a bigger role, obviously, because now she is one of the top veteran defenders now with that opening up. But there are, Cooper, a little bit of a different change, because they're not going to be the only ones coming back, and the only players that are going to be back there, because so many new players for this Panther team.
Great segue. Terrific transition.
That was an awful transition.
But next part of it. So you mentioned 12 newcomers, 11 new freshmen. on this team. So only 6 upperclassmen. So a lot of new players, a lot of new faces, players that these fans may not know about. Tell us a little about those 12 newcomers.
Well, we'll start on the goalkeeping end, Samantha Beckles' partners, if you will. Madeline Fett. I hope she gets in because I'm going to drop the Boba Fett at least once on her.
Right.
Because that's just an absolutely perfect name.
Yep.
But she came from one of the couple players that come from Fruitport High School. She was all-district, all-conference keeper, 435 saves in 3 years. I'm not going to ask you to do the math, Cooper, because I feel like that would just be something that we don't want to do. We don't want to waste anyone's time here at Davenport. Also, Gabrielle Bonnecki, she went to Gull Lake High School out of Plainwell, Michigan. 133 saves over her career, 30 shutouts. That's still a pretty good number. Was a regional champ as a sophomore. And then moving up a little bit, you have 3 new defenders for the Panthers. You have Catherine Hoger, who comes from Waterloo, Ontario, was a very, very smart student out of Blue Vale Collegiate Institute out there in Ontario, kind of in the Kitchener area. An honor roll student. They like to bring in the smart people here at Davenport. Smart kids, both on and off the field.
Absolutely.
Ada Hollahan from Howell, Michigan, was a top defender at Harlan, was on the all-academic team as well. And Rika Hoffman, who comes from Hopkins, she is the only player, the new player this year, that was actually a transfer. She was the one out of Lawrence Tech, like you mentioned earlier, Coop, was named to the all-WAC newcomer team in 2018. Didn't play a whole lot last year, but now is making the jump from the NAIA level to NCAA. You'll probably see her with her experience on the Panther roster this season. In the midfield, you got Mara Carmen Meza Garcia. I hope I said that right. Comes from Godwin Heights High School, 46 career goals, and named all-conference at Godwin Heights. And at Godwin Heights, that is a team that's struggled at times, but she has been one of their bright lights. You have a JC Hacker who comes from Battle Creek, went to Lakeview High School. She was all-city and all-district as a midfielder. Julia Stidham was second-team all-area out of Floyd's Knobs, Indiana, and she was second all-area as a defender. But she's listed as a forward midfielder. You may be seeing her as kind of a defensive midfielder, so someone can play like kind of next to Marissa Woods on the back end. Then you also have Ellie Fisher, who is all-conference and all-district. She was another player that comes out of Fruitport High School. And then you have the forwards. You have Isabel Hunter, who comes out from Glendale, Arizona, Mountain Ridge High School. 55 goals in her career down there. I don't know. Hopefully the weather change won't affect her too much. That's one thing you think of. It is a dry heat out there in Arizona.
That's right.
But it's still hot.
Right.
And here it gets a little cold in the fall.
Yeah, welcome to the Midwest.
I'm trying to figure out how many nice day games we had last season. I'm pretty sure there were a lot of games we had to have the camera inside.
Right. Wind, rain.
Elements. It made it interesting. But hopefully she'll probably have a big impact. All conference and all district down there as well. Chloe Lubers out of Marshall High School was a regional champ as a junior. She was also all conference, all district, and all state. She was a phenomenal player. And then Candace Orange, Battle Creek Central, another program that was she was actually part of the team that had won the game with them for the first time. I think it was 4 years. I think it was. She was a big part of them. Here's the thing though. She was all city and all conference as a junior, as a soccer player, but she was also all conference in basketball and all conference as a kicker for Battle Creek Central's football team.
That's right.
So, I mean, if the schedule persists the way it usually does with soccer, where you play Fridays and Sundays, I'm pretty sure Sparky McEwen could use her on a Saturday every so often.
Yeah. The main note from that, play multiple sports, kids.
Yes.
Get out and be active.
Because guess what? You can't play hockey all the time, and you can't – well, because the ice melts, in the summertime,
That's right.
Because science and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, but no, there's a lot of great looks, great new players coming into the Panther team this year. And all those names, you're going to see a lot of them on the field. I think Paige is going to probably rotate them in a lot because you don't want to just overplay one freshman. I mean, obviously some will step up more than others, but she's going to want to get them all into the action because, listen, all these kids, you want to see what you have. And especially since we're going to have a very odd season if and when it ever starts, you're going to see a lot of new players, a lot of new faces, and maybe a different setup here for the Panthers this upcoming season.
Yep. And exhale.
12
new faces.
I was breathing during that,
You did, but that was great. 12 new faces. Tyler gave you a rundown of every new player on the roster.
I will say this. I will give credit. Cooper Weidenthaler over here, he wrote most of all the bios.
I wrote the bios.
He wrote the bios for them, so I will say this. I was the one that portrayed him. He's the one that wrote him.
Yep.
Cooper here is the hard worker. I'm just the pretty face.
That's right. Shameless plug, dupanthers.com. All our rosters, bios, constantly updated.
Well, if they looked at the little bottom of our little intro video, it's got all of our social medias as well.
Right. Doesn't mean I can't throw it back out there.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So we talked about who's coming back. We talked about new faces. Let's talk about some sponsors and some ads.
We have a lot of great sponsors. Thank for this another episode of the Panther Weekly. Of course, Uccello's in Caledonia, found at 8256 Broadmoor Avenue. Literally, wait, which way is south? That way? That way.
Yep.
that way. They're down that way. Wherever your main dining room is open with limited capacity, of course, due to the coronavirus. But you can catch your favorite sporting events in one of the numerous televisions they have there. You can also online order and curbside pickup by calling 616-891-1100. And you can purchase their award-winning pizza. They currently have a 14-inch pizza coop. It's kind of a bigger pizza for $7.99 if you order takeout or delivery. So if you don't want to stay in and watch the sports and be, just unfortunate because there's baseball, there's the NBA. I know NHL's over with, but that's okay. There's a lot of stuff going on. You can go down to Uccello's.
And South was that way, by the way.
South is that way. God, you know what?
Yep.
We need a compass in here is what we need.
Ryan Thompson behind the camera.
Ryan Thompson not
Pointed
doing a
that
good
out
job.
for us.
We also can thank DeVries Companies, Premier Family Eye Care, J&H Family Stores, Brand Steakhouse and Grill, Parkway Auto, and Chick-fil-A. Gotta love some Chick-fil-A.
Absolutely.
We should have had that yesterday.
Not on Sundays.
Not on Sundays, though.
So that'll do it. Episode 2 in the books. Episode 3 will come your way in a week, but we thank you for watching the first 2 if you have. Stay tuned to dupanthers.com for everything regarding Panther athletics. For Tyler Kuehl, I'm Cooper Weidenthaler. We'll see you next time.